An RPG that has you leading armies against King Mithridates one moment and trading legal arguments with Cicero on the floor of the Roman Senate the next is like catnip for a history fan like myself. I don't tend to root for the Romans, but the appropriately challenging Expeditions Rome doesn't necessarily either. It's a well-written, nuanced depiction of a tumultuous era populated by many complex figures and very few real good guys. It manages to capture so much of the spirit that has made the late Republic fascinating to us for thousands of years, even if it does play fast and loose with some historical details. With 3 acts that can each break 20 hours depending on how meticulous you want to be, Expeditions Rome has a lot to sink your gladius into. Sometimes too much. It layers on so many ways to customize your Praetorian Guard, used in turn-based tactical battles, and legions, used in a semi-random mass combat system where you choose commanders and tactics to influence the outcome. You can craft single-use battle consumables and tactics cards. There's traditional RPG loot, there's gear customization, there are tactical and strategic skills to level up. There are stats for armies that in some cases aren't ever actually explained. What does Legion experience do? And why did I lose so much of it in a battle where I didn't take many casualties? This tooltip isn't very helpful, and none of the in-game tutorials do a better job. When I wasn't sorting through piles of mostly identical armor or trying to puzzle out how mass combat even works, though, I was generally having a great time. The tactical battles are a real highlight, presenting a significant challenge even on the default difficulty, with lots of room to turn a disastrous situation into a runaway victory with clever planning and using the 4 character classes in unison. Shielded Principes can deflect any ranged attacks from the front, while spear-wielding Triarii attack over their shoulders from the second row, and nimble Velites outflank and lay down the damage. The huge variety of scenarios, including epic multi-stage sieges where injuries and losses carry over from one map to the next, meant I never felt bored or like any given battle was a simple cleanup operation. Some maps can even be completed without fighting if you're clever about it. I wish the mass combat was just as engrossing though. There's plenty you can do to increase your chances of winning, like picking the right commanders, building bathhouses in your camp to raise morale, and best of all, drawing tactics cards to respond to situations that come up dynamically as the clash progresses. But in between making these choices, you'll simply see icons wiggle around and casualty numbers be applied to either side based on some kind of hidden dice rolls that I still didn't really understand even 60 hours deep. Why does my side sometimes get handed twice as many attrition events even when I have overwhelming numerical superiority and a commander who specializes in logistics? I was satisfied by the number of levers I could pull to influence things, but that doesn't change how frustrating it is to have no concrete understanding of how this system actually functions under the hood. Conquering first Asia Minor, then North Africa, and finally Gaul is a rousing adventure though, with plenty of exciting twists and turns to experience. Almost all of the great figures of the era, from Caesar to Pompey to Cato, make grand appearances, and you get to experience the city of Rome itself in all of its colorful antique glory. It's one of the best historical playgrounds outside of Assassin's Creed, and while I wouldn't call it slavishly loyal to the sources, it goes out of its way to get a lot of small details right, including the architecture and their pronunciation of classical Latin.
Te caeso Quintius Acollinus, your servus Cineros, and that gladiator who came with you on the ship.
On campaign, you'll have to manage considerations like keeping troop morale high, even when you might need to ask them to do something very risky because it simply needs to be done. Random events will also pop up as you explore. I particularly liked one where I found a village of women whose husbands had been killed by Mithridates and was able to arm them to harass his forces, which came in handy later. Various centurions will react positively or negatively to your choices, which can be stoic, warlike, merciful, or hedonistic. Many of the decisions before you are not simple A or B dialogue choices, and almost none of them have an obvious right or wrong answer. The voice acting throughout is excellent too, with a historically accurate, diverse cast, including a Mauritanian ex-gladiator, an aged Greek warrior turned philosopher.
Then perhaps that is not the point of your life. Perhaps there's something deeper, more fundamental to live for.
And yes, even Caesar himself. Each of them is complex, with a fascinating backstory and meaningful character development. A robust campaign system, uncommonly strong plot and characters, and the chance to live through so much of one of the most fascinating periods in all of human history, Expeditions Rome is one of the better tactical RPGs of the last several years. It can feel weighed down at times by all the systems it tries to cram in, and the mass combat remains a vexing enigma that no tooltip or tutorial can seem to properly explain. But with interesting random events, meaningful strategic choices, and plenty of brain-bending, smaller-scale scenarios to keep things interesting, that can all be mostly forgiven. These developers deserve a Roman triumph. For more Mediterranean madness, check out our God of War PC vs PS5 performance review. And for everything else, keep it right here on IGN.